Welcome to this series of lectures titled the Rahu-Ketu Files. I've called it Files because that's exactly what this is. It is an investigation into all of my research, writings, and studies on Rahu and Ketu that have been compiled over the past decade, past 11 years or so now. So they are the result of years of contemplation and research and my lived application of Jyotish, of all the sessions I've done, all the complicated charts that I've assessed on Rahu and Ketu, focusing a lot on Rahu and Ketu, and all of the studies and all the things that I've learned over the years, and my own personal experience with Rahu and Ketu. So, my goal in this series is very simple. It is to give Rahu and Ketu the seriousness and depth, right? The right and make them as practical and applicable, and move beyond fear, beyond superstition, and beyond cliche. So it's that simple. So let's start our first lecture of this series, the Rahu Ketu Files. So here's the overview. We're going to cover these six core things: introduction and two core sutras, actually three core sutras, uh, astronomical birth, metaphors of mythic astronomy, the entanglement of consciousness and phenomenality. This is a very interesting one. Actually, all of this is super interesting. So stick around. Functions of Rahu and Ketu in formulating experience, and can we remedy Rahu and Ketu, which is a very important question because astrology, especially Jyotish, the idea of remedies, upay, which we call, is very common. And upay is generally these things that people do, these magical sort of ideas. Uh, which is a different sort of world. But here we are focusing on a different way of understanding how to remedy and how to understand Rahu and Ketu. So let's get into it. So Rahu and Ketu are the nodes of the moon. They are amongst the most mysterious and misunderstood aspect of Jyotish, and for good reason. Number one, the basic reason is that Jyotish is a work in progress, and it is a very subtle method which which is telling us about the metaphysics of reality, the subtle understanding of reality, and how reality organizes itself. And it has been lost for like hundreds and probably thousands of years now. And now Jyotish is sort of rediscovering itself. As you've seen, the trend over the past at least one decade, like 10 years, 20 years, but even in the 20th century, we saw like with Professor B.V. Raman's efforts, Professor K.N. Rao's efforts, and all of these really important astrologers who have like served Jyotish in some profound ways, right? So Jyotish is being rediscovered, and it's more and more of it is coming back into consciousness. This video, and I just want to say this one, and this channel represents one small step towards the realization of this immense potential that Jyotish has. So I'm absolutely obsessed and I absolutely love Jyotish. So this is my effort, like to start those kinds of dialogues, to do the research, to work in this field as much as I can with as much sincerity possible. Anyway, coming back to the thing is, unlike the physical grahas, Rahu and Ketu lack material form, right? So if you look at the sky, you cannot see Rahu and Ketu. You cannot see them in the daytime, obviously, in nighttime. They are mathematical points, right? Born of an astronomical phenomenon involving sun, moon, and earth, right? So there an certain astronomical phenomenon happens, and we'll understand as we'll move through this lecture. Between sun, moon, and earth, a certain thing happens, and Rahu, and we get these two mathematical points that have been named by the ancients. Rahu and that's the most famous, most popular name, Rahu and Ketu. There are different names, like Rahu is also called Tamo, or Avidya. There's a word associated with Rahu which is Avidya, or Tamo, or dhumra is another word. I think with Ketu there's a word called dhumra, dhwaja. So we know of these words also, these terms, but the most famous words associated, the names associated with these mathematical points are Rahu and Ketu, right? So understanding these names in and of itself will tell us a lot about their function, about what they are, right? But anyway, so the only time they become visible is during a total or partial solar eclipse, right? The black spot on the sun, where its light is obscured by moon's alignment in their orbital planes, is when you can actually see the phenomenon of Rahu and Ketu, right? So the only time you actually become aware that there are these mathematical points that are moving around in space are is when sun, moon, and earth align in a way that the sun gets eclipsed. And that eclipse, the phenomenon of eclipse, the black thing that covers the sun, which is basically the moon, but it's the astronomical event, has a metaphysical implication, has a psychological implication, has an existential implication, and that's what we're going to cover also in this lecture. So these shadow grahas, as they're called often, chaya grahas is common. Chaya essentially can be translated to shadow. So these chaya grahas exist solely due to the dynamic interplay between sun, which is the Atman, moon, which is the Manas, and the earth, the stage, the physical the physical realm, Bhulok, uh, terrestrial realm, terrestrial existence, where the drama, the psychodrama of existence happens, where the entanglement of Atman and Manas takes place. Manas takes place, right? So, over the centuries, the interpretation has been clouded by speculation and anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism means a human creating a humanoid figure out of them, right? So, it helps us relate to the symbols associated to manifest them in a way where we can understand their energy, right? So, because as a principle, as an energetic theme, we are not able to understand, grasp the ideas. So what we do is, if Rahu creates fear, the anthropomorphic form of Rahu will be a fear inducing, will feel terrifying. So one of the sutras on Rahu uses the word, describes Rahu as Bhayankar, Bhaya, the fear inducer, the one that is terrifying, right? So when you anthropomorphize, it's a complicated word, as you can probably tell, is for me to pronounce. So the anthropomorphized form of Rahu will always have uh, sort of this terrifying form. And then the sutra says, and similar is Ketu. So Ketu is also Bhayankar. It's both are fear inducing grahas, as understood in that particular sutra. Now, uh, we have anthropomorphized for good reason, and it helps us understand and relate and sort of continually engage with that energy so that it doesn't sort of get lost in time. We have like created uh, forms and shapes out of them, but we are talking essentially of a metaphysical principle, a psycho-metaphysical principle, to be precise, a psychologically important principle which is subtler than the physical, right? And a lot of speculation, because as I said before, like is finding its way back, and a lot of the knowledge got lost over the past hundreds and thousands of years because of either the texts got lost, the palm leaves, that the all the oral tradition got lost, lineages dissipate, a lot of untimely deaths happened in the previous, like dark medieval ages and ages before that also, for different complicated reasons. A lot of the knowledge got lost, and the resurrection of the knowledge is sort of happening over the past 100 years, but especially now in this particular century. So, as aspects of reality, here we come back. In my experience, both approaches miss the mark. Rahu and Ketu are not to be feared or worshipped, right? Neither to be feared, not to be worshipped. They have to be approached with understanding, right? And uh, if there is fear, understanding with temperate. If there's worship as an overwhelmed sort of this divine, seeing them as divine beings of some sort, then that would also get tempered. We need to understand them as a part of our psycho-metaphysical reality, as something which is unfolding karma in a certain way, right? So we have to understand them as certain psychometaphysical phenomenon creating the human experience as we currently know it, right? Some have feared their influence, seeking to pacify them through rituals, while others have romanticized them as necessary agents of soul's evolution. In either case, it sort of it misses the mark, sort of. We want to understand them. So, as aspects of reality, they require understanding and observation. So, you understand what is being said, shared in this lecture also, and then observe for yourself and try to study it over time. Study it in your own birth chart. So, we need to study them. Rahu and Ketu tell us something about the nature of time and the nature of nature itself, and they are structuring categories that shape and shift experience in accordance with a certain very complex order. And the word that was used in the Rig Veda for this natural order was Rit, RTA, Rit. So Rit, and the word Ritu in Hindi uh, and even Sanskrit comes from this ancient sort of Rit, as far as I can tell. It's this idea of an ordering principle, natural order of the cosmos, or you could even sometimes the word dharma is also used in that way. So let us begin this series, a journey to explore Rahu and Ketu not as objects of fear, just but as windows of freedom. Right. So that's a very interesting proposition. Not just something that is tying us down, but by understanding them, this act of understanding and coming to consciousness can relieve us of certain pressures and misconceived ideas and stuff. So we will unravel their mysteries, meanings, misconceptions, and methods of interpretation, and various other things in this series. And or I don't know how many episodes or lectures this will be, but I'm hoping for this series, these Rahu Ketu files, to be a long one. So let's see how this goes. Now we go on to a very core sutra. This sutra is the 10th sutra in chapter 3 of what's available of what we call Parashara Hora or Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. Is the 10th sutra in chapter 3. The chapter 3 is called Grahagun Swarupadhyaya, which means the nature and form of the Grahas. So this sutra is Athaketa Ravichandro Mangalascha Buddhastha Guru Shukra Shani Rahu Ketushchate Yathakramas. Now the moving ones. Keta is a very interesting word. I was discussing this with one of my Sanskrit teachers, and they were speaking about it can come from Khechar, which means wandering, uh, uh, the wanderers in the sky, the moving ones, the ones that are moving. But Keta, he couldn't like sort of locate the term itself. It is specifically found in this particular Jyotish text. So from Parashara Hora. So I don't know, like, so Keta just means the moving ones, which are, so these are named, the 9 grahas have been named specifically. The sun, which is Ravi, Chandra, which is moon, Mangal, which is Mars, Buddha, which is Mercury, Guru, which is Jupiter, Shukra, which is Venus, Shani, which is Saturn, Rahu, which is Rahu, and Ketu, Ketu. Right? So these 9 are given, and then it says Yathakramas, which is in this order. It is asking us to follow this order, and this order is sort of used in the entire text. All the sutras in the entire Pariyat Parashara Hora Shastra, whenever the grahas are spoken of, they're spoken of in this particular order. To understand, to remember, to memorize this order, it's just Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday is Mars's day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then after Saturday, the 7th day, Rahu and Ketu. 8th and 9th grahas are mentioned. Right, so Sunday is 1, Monday, Mars, Mercury, Wednesday, Venus, Jupiter, Thursday, Friday is Freya, Friday, Venus Day, Shukra, Saturn, Saturday, Rahu and Ketu. So it's easy to remember. So now we have the 9 grahas. Interestingly, obviously, Rahu and Ketu are added in this order. So why I wanted to just bring the sutra up is this is the first time the order of the grahas are given in Parashara Hora. Parashara Hora is the highest, most authoritative text. I have not found any text to be as comprehensive uh, than as comprehensive as Parashara Hora, right? So Rahu and Ketu are mentioned in these 9 grahas. None of the other entities, nothing else is mentioned, right? And Rahu and Ketu are not physically observed. Like you cannot look at the sky. So the idea was that ancients were primitive people who could not, who were these agrarian sort of people who were just sitting down and waiting. And observing the night sky in their free time. And that's how astrology and astronomy of that time came up. That's not how it came about. It came about through yogic perception. So because the more you study Jyotish, the kinds of things they're speaking of, the subtle calculations that they're making to calculate the vargas, the ideas of upagrahas, which are all mathematical points, sensitive points. Rahu and Ketu, they're all subtle points. The precision with which they calculated the eclipses, which took modern astronomers quite a time to figure out. Modern astronomers were quite excited when they could predict eclipses precisely. There's enough calculation to predict eclipses very precisely, especially I think in Surya Siddhanta and one of these Ganit related Siddhanta related texts. The point is that Rahu and Ketu have been added very precisely, and the way Jyotish is sort of received and understood is not through observation of night sky. It's a false idea. I don't like going there, but it is sort of this outsider Eurocentric sort of idea. It is an idea which is not coming from like this idea of yogic perception, like refined, subtle perception of the inner eye, is not understood clearly by physical sciences and Western academy as such. So when they treat texts like Jyotish, disciplines like Jyotish, they treat it in a very different way. Uh, Even a lot of Western astrologers who got into Jyotish sort of see Western astrology and Jyotish as very similar. It's not. Jyotish is very, very precise and very specific and absolutely mind blowing. The point is, Rahu and Ketu have been added very specifically in this sutra, and they have a very, very particular, very important role. So, the idea is to place them at a very important role in the scheme of nine grahas. Then there are two more sutras, right? So, there are three sutras in total. These two sutras are very important. This first one says Sarva Atmacha Divanatho Manaha Kumud Bandavaha Sattvam Kujo Buddhaih Prokto Buddho Vani Pradayakaha, which is important. Why? Because it's telling us sun is Atman, moon, the companion of lotus, is Manas, right? And then it tells us what Mars, Mercury, and all of these are, right? And then it tells us what Jupiter is, Devedyo Jnana Sukhado, which is the one worshipped by the virtuous devas, the virtuous beings, the divine beings, the shining ones. Dev comes from the root div, which is shining. The divine ones, the virtuous ones, are gives is which is Jupiter, gives the joy giving jnana, the gyan, the knowledge which gives relief, joy. So it speaks about all of these. What all of these are do. The shadow born is the giver of sorrow, which is Saturn is the giver of sorrow, or dukkha, which can be forbearance. So not just sorrow, it's forbearance also. Sorrow and the capacity to bear sorrow, both are Saturn. What's important for us for this lecture and why these two sutras were given was that a certain psychostructure of experience is being given. These are the two most important sutras, in my personal opinion, when it comes to Jyotish. The first one, because it is telling us about, for both of these are telling us about the grahas as psychostructuring cognitive, metacognitive, sort of subtle capacities that are shaping our experience. Right? So, and out of this, sun is told as Atman, moon is told as Manas, right? So just let's take a moment what I mean by psychostructure, because it's a interesting term that I'm sort of introducing. The term psychostructure refers to the dynamic framework within which consciousness manifests and operates, encompassing the interconnected layers of awareness, perception, cognition, and action. Interconnected layers which are also interconnected in complex ways of awareness, sun, which is consciousness, perception, how it's experiencing reality, cognition, all the things that it can do and act out and understand, and action, like do things, move in within this field of perception and cognition. Right. So Jyotish, the grahas, symbolize the components of this framework. Right. So each representing an archetypal force that shapes the individual and collective experience. These two sutras that we just touched upon, these it's telling what what is given to what. So it says buddhe prokto buddho vani pradayaka. It's saying that Mercury is the one which gives vani, right? So vani is generally given as speech, but it's the power of articulation, the power of forming a voice internally, sort of sort of an intellectual sort of uh, inner dialogue. Sort of starts with sort of a mercurial thing where you give name to things, and then you start the ideas around those names, and those things start to interact with each other. So Mercury is given a very specific role. So we see the psychostructure is not static but evolves through interplay of these forces, influenced by karmic patterns, which is the vasanas and samskaras, the subtle imprints, proclivities, tendencies that we're carrying, the genetic information that we're carrying into this lifetime, and how it's the trajectory of our growth, psychological growth, spiritual growth, the psycho spiritual growth, and physical sort of evolution. So it integrates the subtle and gross dimensions of existence, providing a lens through which the psyche navigates reality and engages with the cosmos, with nature, with cosmos as in what's happening on Earth. Cosmos just sounds too grand. It's a, we cannot right now think in cosmic terms. Very hard for us to even think in local terms properly, let alone national and international global terms. Cosmos is just off the charts for our current level of perception. Just how we are navigating reality in our day-to-day life. It's very grounded, it's very practical. So at its core, the psychostructure reflects the organization of chitta, the field of consciousness, as described in Sankhya and Yoga, where manas, which is a receptive faculty, moon, satellite, modulator, receiver. So moon is absolutely important to have a smooth experience in life. So your interpretation of reality is not distorted. Buddhi, intelligence and discernment, which could be given to Sun, Mercury, but Buddhi is not Mercury. Buddhi is intelligence and discernment available to each graha. Buddhi is placed within, it's very close to the Sun. It's sort of a quality of Atman. And Atman applies itself to all the grahas, and every graha has a certain way of discernment and intelligence, a way it understands itself. And it has a way to sort of engage with reality. For example, Mercury will give you speech related articulation, right? Jupiter will give you a heartfelt jnana, like an deeper philosophical understanding, right? An insight. And then you verbalize that insight through Mercury, and you find the right words, you organize it in the correct way. So each one has its own buddhi. It has its own way of discerning, and they're basically borrowing the light of the sun. These grahas, the sun is at the center, the atman is at the center. They're borrowing the light of each of the of the sun. Each of the grahas are borrowing the light and sort of using that to create their own framework, own way of discernment. And ahankara, which is the sense of individuality, the sense of like, this is mine, I have a certain sense of being. I am, whether I like it or not, whether it's distorted or not, but I am. It's a fact that I am right now, right? As you are you and I am I, right? An identification, it's an identification with the process of becoming. My particular process of becoming, as like my sun at the center, and this process of becoming around my own solar system is creating a sense of I. It's just this self referring uh, 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 unfoldment of consciousness. It's this constant becoming, and interact under the guidance of Atman, which is the conscious principle at the center, entangled, or the entangled Atman. So Atman totally disidentified with its light, and the light is sort of modulated completely by all of this metaphysics that we are studying, by the Jyotish that we are studying, right? So Atman getting totally unconscious and totally entangled. That's why they say, remember your Atman, remember who you are. You're always the awareness behind all experience. But there's so much phenomenon happening in the awareness, that awareness has lost its sense of self, its sense of Atman, of its as a consciousness upholding all the structures, and has become the structures. It has become the phenomenon. So it is this structure that determines how internal states, such as emotions and thoughts, align with external experiences, creating a coherent sense of self and reality. So it's forming a coherent sense of self, that this is who I am, I like this, I don't like this, I hate these kind of people, I love these kind of people, I can write really well, I can speak really well, I can not write really well, I don't like to read books. All of this sort of being shaped uh, through eons and eons of evolution of psychological coming into psychophysically, psychospiritually coming into being, and this sort of intense and complex unfoldment in time. That's what we're studying in Jyotish, and that's what I mean by psychostructure. So we see astronomical birth of Rahu and Ketu. We come back to Rahu and Ketu. That was just the basic foundations to understand like where Rahu and Ketu are to be placed. The ecliptic is the apparent path of the sun, traces it through the sky over the course of a year as seen from Earth. Right? So from Earth, you see sun has a path, and we are observing from Earth. So as we observe a certain movement around sun, sort of seems like moving around us, right? And it forms a imaginary sort of path. Imaginary in the sense that actually Earth is moving around sun, but from our perception, our perspective, sun moves around Earth and forms this line called ecliptic. And then moon also goes around Earth, so it forms another plane, another sort of line, which is called the orbital plane of the moon. This when it comes, moon's orbital plane and ecliptic are sort of at a 5.1 degree angle from each other. So because of this angle, this 5.1 degree tilt, they intersect. The two circles intersect, right? And the moment they intersect, they form these two points, mathematical points, right? One is called the descending node, one is called the ascending node. The ascending because it's moving, it's above this ecliptic, and descending because it sort of goes below the ecliptic, right? So ascending node of the moon, it's the north node of the moon you see here, and the descending node of the moon is the south node of the moon. These are termed by the ancients as Rahu and Ketu. These are the most famous names. There are many ways they've been referred to. There's one sutra which calls Rahu and which refers to Rahu and Ketu as Swarbhanu Puchuko, Swarbhanu Puchak, which is Swarbhanu's tail, Swarbhanu and his tail. So Rahu is just termed as Swarbhanu, and Ketu is called as Puchak, which is tail. So there are many ways they've been referred to in different texts, and every name would tell us about something. So study these names in your own time. These nodes, Rahu and Ketu, are not physical entities but mathematical points where the sun, moon, and earth align perfectly to produce these eclipses. Right? Sun, moon, and earth align in ways which produces these eclipses. During a solar eclipse, the moon obscures sun from earth's perspective at one of these nodes, creating the illusion of Rahu or Ketu devouring the sun. Similarly, during a lunar eclipse, the earth casts its shadow on the moon at one of these nodes. So earth can cast a shadow on the moon and create it can be moon Rahu conjunction with sun Ketu conjunction, or moon Ketu conjunction with sun Rahu. Both of them would produce a lunar eclipse. And when sun moon Rahu or sun moon Ketu are together, it can form a solar eclipse. Rahu and Ketu emerge from this precise astronomical relationship, right? It's a mathematical and astronomical relationship reflecting the dynamic interaction of three primary components. That's why I placed those two sutras. Sun as Atman, consciousness, moon as Manas, conditioned mind, of sort of this cognitive capacity that we have to interact with life, and earth, the realm of karmic experience, or the realm, the bhulok, right? The bhu, which is the bhavas are formed by earth. Our bhavas in a birth chart, if you know the houses, which are called in Western astrology, the bhavas, the 12 bhavas are formed by earth, the bhu. It's a common root in bhu and bhava. So now we see this interplay forms the foundation for their psycho-metaphysical significance. Psycho-metaphysical significance. The astronomical birth has a psycho-subtle meta beyond physical significance, representing the forces of duality, evolution, and completion. Right? So this is the basic introduction of astronomical birth through this particular section. Metaphors of mythic astronomy. So we see from this particular astronomical birth, we see After somehow figuring out the complex calculations, principles, and techniques that give us the perfect system of metaphysics, Jyotish, the ancients resorted to explaining the astronomy via simple tales. Understand this, so important. So they got into this profound complex calculations and figured out Rahu and Ketu, placed them in the Navgrahas, the nine grahas in that sutra, Athaketa, Ravichandra, the first sutra that we saw. And we see they they give so many calculations throughout Brihat Hora Shastra to figure out the entire system. And then they use really simple tales to tell you about their significance, their psychological significance, their metaphysical significance. So it's not that they're not aware that these tales are just sort of these tales to express these metaphysics. Imagine doing such a complex calculation and then giving these profound simple tales. A teaching, it's a teaching tool. At least that's what I understand. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Always get into a discussion in the comments. Highly encourage it. It'll help me learn more and it'll help you learn more. Right? So the ancients resorted to explaining the astronomy via simple tales. So our modern complexity seeking intellects cannot wrap our heads around the power of this simplicity. How metaphors can capture within them the essence of the structuring principles and the rules of the psyche. They weren't concerned with astronomy in the sense of the modern times, that is, understanding space and as a physical place, but as a psycho-metaphysical event. They understand space-time, Kal, as a psycho-metaphysical event. They're not interested in dead rock and finding other alien species and understanding black holes and stuff. They are they are interested in what space-time is ontologically. What does it mean to my being, to my atman, to my existence? It has no practical purpose for them. The modern astronomy has no practical purpose other than the ganit, the mathematical part of it, which will help us do more precise Jyotish. So one way modern astronomy serves Jyotish is that they make the calculations more precise, which makes our Jyotish softwares more precise, which allows us to cast more accurate birth charts, so we can understand ourself and our structure and our karma and our prarabdha karma better. So anything that did not concern ontology, epistemology, and soteriology. Soteriology is the ology, the discipline of freedom, liberation. Yogic stuff is all soteriological. Epistemology is that which has to deal with knowledge and how to we receive knowledge. So when I said that Jyotish is understood through refined yogic perception, that is the epistemology of Jyotish. Epistemology of Jyotish is not by observing night sky. It is through observing night sky by going into dhyan, meditation, what they call in the West. I like saying it. I like saying like how it's in Jyotish and Sanskrit and how they call it in the West, because we have adopted so many terms and these kind of things that we're losing our own vocabulary in a way, which is very philosophical and deep. Our own vocabulary is very philosophically and deep. So we see, to understand this, let's briefly take an episode from the Samudra Manthan. Samudra Manthan is the most important tale for a Jyotishi. It is, and especially for Rahu and Ketu. So, or the churning of the ocean of consciousness. So they call it churning of ocean. Samudra means ocean, and Manthan means to churn, right? So it is a tale of ocean churning the ocean of consciousness. This event symbolizes the eternal tug of war between opposing forces, devas, virtuous beings, and asuras, which is vicious, non virtuous beings, as it churned the cosmic ocean to obtain Amrita and the nectar of immortality. So, Amrit is the nectar of immortality. Amrit is what you receive in deep meditations, as they say. I don't know. That's what they say. Uh, Mrit means death, that which decays. Amrit means that which does not decay. So Amrit is seen as a nectar a lot of the times, but Amrit can also be seen as a state of consciousness. So when you go through this Samudra Manthan in your consciousness and go through meditative experience and fight the virtuous as side of you and the non-virtuous side of you, the devas and asuras, the good and evil within you. And as it churns, and as you practice and you keep your sadhana and you keep walking the path, that's what they say, you realize a state, you get amrit, you become immortal. Your consciousness is not bound to birth and rebirth. It becomes a choice. Right now it's not a choice. Amidst this great churning, a critical moment occurs when Swarbhanu, an asura, cunningly disguises himself as a deva to consume the nectar. So Swarbhanu changes its form, it deceives, and goes sits because Swarbhanu realizes that something is going on, something is off. The devas and asuras, what's happening is devas want to get the nectar of immortality. Asuras also want it, so they've decided, they've come up with a deal that uh, they go to Vishnu, and Vishnu comes with, which is the all pervading principle. Vishnu just means that which is everywhere and everything. Uh, they Vishnu becomes Mohini, and Mohini says, I will distribute this nectar. The Mohini is this extremely beautiful apsara, this beautiful being, woman, who is said to be one of the most beautiful, as they have a lot of like descriptions of how beautiful this is in the ancient texts. So the asuras, being asuras, the non-virtuous ones, start lusting over Mohini, and devas know what's going on, and they are the restrained, controlled, virtuous ones. So she's distributing it, and Swarbhanu sees through the deception. So Swarbhanu is both the deceiver and the ones who sees through deception. Swarbhanu sees that Vishnu is acting like Mohini. So Swarbhanu changes its form and goes sits with the devas, because she's distributing it to the devas first. And Swarbhanu receives a drop. So Swarbhanu actions represent the egoic ambition to partake in the eternal. That's one symbol. A desire to transcend limitations without integration or earning. Very important. This is a very Rahu Ketu kind of theme. Just as the nectar touches his lips, the sun and moon expose his deception. So sun and moon, are Surya and Chandra, are also sitting in the with the devas, with the virtuous ones, and they figure out, because they are the ones with the light. They figure out with perception, they're the faculties of perception. They figure out that this guy is deceiving. There's something's wrong. So Vishnu, in its Mohini form, Mohini turns back to Vishnu actually, and then slices Swarbhanu with a Sudarshana chakra. Sudarshana chakra is like this disc, right? Chakra means like a sort of a rotating disc, and Sudarshana means that which is radiant, right? Darshana means that which is seen. Suk means that which is beautiful form. That which is viewed as something with a beautiful, radiant form. So it's radiant chakra, sort of. At least that's how. If I'm wrong, just comment in the section. In the just tell me what Sudarshana is. The exact etymology of Sudarshana. He throws his Sudarshana chakra. This axe transforms Swarbhanu into Rahu, the severed head, and Ketu, the tail. Swarbhanu Puchako. That's why the sutra says. Rahu itself can be referred to as Swarbhanu, and Ketu simply as a tail of Swarbhanu. Swarbhanu's tail is not the same as Varaha and Matsya. That's a different tail when it comes to mythic astronomy. Varaha and Matsya are avatars. They are more mythologically revealing, but they tell us nothing astronomical to us. This is because Varaha and Matsya are the avatars, and therefore have a direct psychological implication on human condition, whereas Swarbhanu is telling us more of an origin story, an astronomical origin story, but with obvious psychological implications. So it's giving us a psychological implication through an astronomical origin story. Varaha and Matsya are a different kind of psycho-mythic story. It's a it's a mythological tale which tells us about the structure of being, something about how life is unfolding. Both of them are telling us about Rahu and Ketu. In another lecture, we'll cover Varaha and Matsya. So we see four things can be understood. There are probably hundreds of things that can be understood through this particular theme, Samudra Manthan, and you can read more and more online and in different sources about Samudra Manthan. But the idea is these four themes can be understood. Sorbhanu's deception reflects the hidden nature of Rahu and Ketu. First of all, Rahu and Ketu have a deceiving nature. Rahu disguises himself as a devata to partake in the nectar of immortality. This mirrors the deceptive nature of Rahu and Ketu, which obscures reality and operate in subtler hidden dimensions of experience. Their influence is often felt through illusions, obsessions, and unseen forces driving desires and its patterns. And it causes a lot of distortion and confusion. So that's one theme. Division by the Sudarshana Chakra encodes the birth of the nodes. Vishnu's Swadarshana Chakra cutting Swarbhanu in half creates Rahu and Ketu, representing the ascending and descending nodes of the moon. This symbolizes the astronomical intersections where the sun, moon, and earth align, causing eclipses. You see how that psycho-astronomical, that myth, the small tale is telling us so much about the astronomy of how these things are formed. This symbolizes the astronomical intersections. The act of slicing is also reflects the dual nature of these nodes, once moving towards desire and the unknown, Rahu, and the other towards detachment and completion. But the idea is not that. The idea is uh, the Sudarshana Chakra is the ecliptic. Yeah, so here, the fourth one is this. So Rahu, Ketu, let's go through the third one first. Sorry for like, like, is this just so much interesting information? I get super excited. Rahu and Ketu's revenge explains eclipses. After being exposed by the sun and moon and subsequently being severed by Vishnu, Rahu and Ketu swallow them during eclipses. This expresses the mythic origin of eclipses. The shadowy nodes obscures the light of the sun and moon, symbolizing the temporary disruption of consciousness, sun and mind in life cycles. So awareness, pure awareness, and modulation of awareness, the reflection of pure awareness on earth in an earthly experience in duality, moon, sun and moon forming the dual thing, and earth, and there's an entanglement that happens between sun, moon, and earth. And you see, because of that entanglement, because of the ecliptic, the Sudarshana Chakra thrown by Vishnu. Sudarshana Chakra, Vishnu is sun, the all-pervading principle. Vishnu is, in from a Jyotish perspective, the sun. Sun's ecliptic around Earth is the Sudarshana Chakra, which severs Moon's orbit through Earth in a certain fashion that it gives rise to Earth and Moon because the tilt. Right? So that is the idea. The apparent path of the sun around Earth, Swarbhanu's division by the chakra reflects the intersection of Moon's orbital path with the ecliptic, giving rise to the nodes and their astronomical significance. So we learned four things. Rahu and Ketu can be deceptive. The tale is and gives us something about the birth of the nodes. It tells us that Rahu and Ketu, because they were exposed by sun and moon, so they say that it's taking revenge. Every eclipse is sort of an act of revenge. So to obscure sun and moon's light, and then it tells us that the Sudarshana chakra is actually Vishnu's chakra. Vishnu is sun, and the chakra is the ecliptic, which is the path, the imaginary path of the sun around the earth as seen from earth. It's which gives rise to the zodiac, also bha chakra, which we call. And its intersection with moon, as we saw in astronomical birth, giving rise to Rahu and Ketu. So entanglement of consciousness and phenomenality. So to understand Rahu and Ketu, we must understand the basic structure of reality as described by Jyotish. Right? So we have the sun and the moon. These act mostly as one intermingled unit. Sun and moon are mostly completely entangled in our current experience. We are not aware of a pure mindless awareness state, and we are not purely into a mental state. Mind is only happening because of this light that moon receives, manas receives from the sun. So in Rig Veda, there are certain shlokas, sutras, or whatever you want to call it, which suktas, I think, which say the one living on the borrowed light of the Prajapati. Prajapati is the sun. The one on the borrowed light, which is they're referring to moon. So always, they're always in a relationship to each other. Just how we have day and night forming one complete day, we have sun and moon forming the totality of experiencing individual who is having an earthly experience of reality. So we're having a very real earthly experience right now. Sun is the Atman, pure consciousness, awareness, inherent confidence and sense of I am and I cannot be, for I basically am. And I cannot not be. I is, for basically I am. How can you, in my, it's so empirically embedded into our experience that you are, and that's one fact that someone cannot convince you of. You can lose your sense of self and start believing you're not, and sort of lose your mental balance, but you still are, in the sense as an awareness, as someone who can be, who can still see, perceive, whether in this body for an atheist or beyond this body for a believer of some religious work, the I amness is self evident. So, my effort here was that I amness, whether you're an atheist, believer, religious, non religious, whatever you are, this fundamental fact of Jyotish that Jyotish tells us about the sun is that you are. We have then the moon, which is the manas. This is the part of you that is having all kinds of reactions and resistances as you are reading what I'm saying. Like you're feeling like, oh, this guy is talking too fast, he's talking too slow, why is he uh, doing this, or oh, I love this, I love what he's talking about, it so makes so much sense, I want to learn more about it, I want to continue listening to this video. All the feelings, emotions, resistances, all the things that are happening within your manas, about how you've been conditioned so far. This is the memory bank, the image processing center, the feeling center that attuned to its environment and relays it back to pure awareness that is actually the light of the sun, allowing manas to also function. But all of this happens so quickly, there is no distinction. The Atman is totally intermingled by manas, deha paradigm, with the body mind is sort of this one psychosomatic field of experience. Moon and earth. Moon and earth are also like its own little thing. So deha, and deha is the body, the lagna and the bhavas and the manas are sort of entangled, and sun, they're sort of moving around sun, and this sort of is creating an entanglement which is so fast that it's creating phenomenality, it's creating more and more phenomenon, it's creating more and more things in our experience. So we see the Atman and Manas interact with earth, physical, material, elemental life, and a phenomenon occurs. This is the entanglement this is this entanglement is a phenomenon of Rahu and Ketu. So the sun, moon, and earth entangling, the phenomenon is the idea of this entanglement, the serpent of Kal, the thing that entangles us, which creates this fated path in our life, is Rahu and Ketu. So they are the destiny points in a sense. Rahu and Ketu are absolutely foundational, the most important things in Jyotish. So if you see, governed and regulated by the presence and influence of Rahu and Ketu, the very moment where the eternal unified reality of Sun, who is the Atman, begins to lose itself in the reflective, conditioned experience of Moon, which is the Manas, it is here that the soul descends into dualistic entanglement, where Rahu and Ketu are mathematically yet symbolically psychometaphysically born, giving rise to this idea of Ketu, of this past life momentum, and Rahu, this future orientation, a pull towards the things that are unknown, and the unconscious force of this past inertia of the samskaras and vasanas that you carry from past, and Rahu, this sort of this pull of the future, the unconscious that is becoming because of our patterns but has not yet become. So the five grahas, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, are the five elements, the Pancha Mahabhutas. These are the five capacities, indriyas or senses, physical, mental, and energetic in nature, that allow the sun moon system to engage with reality. From the coming together of sun, moon, and earth, as we saw, we get Rahu and Ketu. So this is the basic framework of Jyotish. This is how experience is in getting entangled, pure awareness is getting entangled into phenomenon. The only thing that you actually truly are in a birth chart is the Atman. Everything else is phenomenal stuff. The capacities of Atman according to its karmic stuff. So there's sun and moon, pure awareness, conditioned awareness, five elemental grahas, the five capacities, the five indriyas, karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, and then the entanglement of sun, moon, earth, giving rise to Rahu and Ketu, this modulating sort of these fated sort of two things. They're always 180 degrees, the severed head, and they're always opposite each other in a birth chart, always moving in this way. So within the whole psychostructure of experience, it is Rahu and Ketu that form the entanglement in experience. This is how we find ourselves born in certain circumstances, proclivities, vasanas, and sanskaras, and have a very subjective experience of reality, of an otherwise objective reality which sun can experience. But we have a very subjective experience of reality. Rahu and Ketu decide our biases, triggers, complexes, complications in our entire psychostructure. There are other avasthas with other grahas, which also form a lot of complexities in us, our good things and the complications that we feel. Rahu and Ketu are the most important, but they do unfold in relationship to the rest of the birth chart. One must therefore inform first and foremost practice and learn everything in Jyotish without Rahu and Ketu. After understanding the psychostructure, understand the points of entanglement that set the overall trajectory of the individual. So the five elements are given, which are your five capacities working in different ways, different rashis, different bhavas, different ways. It's different strengths. It's some capacities we have really strong, some are weak. Some people have strong sense of smell, some people have strong sense of sight, some people can see through things more deeply. It's all different indriyas and karmendriyas depending on the grahas. And sun and moon are our basic sort of perception, our sense of ego, individuality, and give us basic sense of confidence and a way to interact with reality. But Rahu and Ketu are the points of entanglement, which create these very sort of destined moments in life. Understanding these dark sort of these points, Shaya Grahas, can give us a lot of sort of compassion towards ourselves, towards others, and toward an acceptance towards the complexity of karma. Rahu and Ketu really humbles the heart sincerely, like how complex karma is in its unfoldment and how sort of how much we depend on grace. So, functions of Rahu and Ketu in formulating experience. So, these nodes were named Rahu and Ketu by the ancient Sankhya Acharyas, which is metaphysicians. I use the word Sankhya Acharyas of the East, who sought to understand the nature and structure of experience. Rahu and Ketu's existence arises not as physical objects but as mathematical points of intersection born out of the tilt between Sun's ecliptic, the path of pure consciousness, and the Moon's orbital plane, which is the conditioned psyche. They are like an idea that exists, a subjective emotion. No one can understand your Rahu and Ketu, your precise subjective thing that affects consciousness but utterly intangible, a ghost of sorts. It is for the one experiencing it, but to others, it is only a figment of that individual's imagination. So keep this in mind. The first thing to understand Rahu and Ketu is that they are utterly subjective and are absolutely a reality for the individual experiencing them. Objectively, they're not real, totally illusory. This objectively must be realized by the person and free themselves of their influence. And freeing themselves of the influence is not that the influence stops, otherwise you have to get sort of yogically, you have to evolve your consciousness with yogic ways, but freeze in the sense of acceptance. You sort of can watch and have more patience for these complications of our life. Now, there can be various interpretations that Rahu and Ketu. Rahu can give immense success, and look at this famous person's chart, what an envious life they're living. This is all a misunderstanding. When one is not philosophically anchored on the basic ground from which all judgments are derived in Jyotish, or on its one is ought to make such mistakes in interpretation. Goals of Sankhya Yoga are foundational, and it is from there that all judgment must be derived. All judgment has to be derived from the understanding of the philosophy of Jyotish Sankhya Yoga. When it's from the ideas around Bhagavad Gita, from the objectivities of consciousness. When you're grounded there, then your interpretation and value judgment of things would be different. You wouldn't say, oh, yeah, Rahu is strong, you'll get so rich. A person might gain some success, but they're not feeling okay, or their perception is distorted, or they're doing things to gain that money which are not okay, right? Or they are feeling lost in some sense, even though they are moving towards the goal. So the subjective complications or the psychodynamics, the complicated psychodynamics that arise because of Rahu and Ketu are to be judged properly. And for that proper judgment, from that proper discernment to arise, we have to philosophically ground ourselves in the proper understanding of what we are actually doing in Jyotish. What is Jyotish really about? So we see, so anyone going astray from those goals and extending outwardly is essentially being tormented by phenomenal existence. They may be feeling great at the moment, but it is only a matter of time when things go down and then things go up. So we are on this Ferris wheel, or this sort of going up and down in time, this sort of Akala Chakra. So Rahu and Ketu are the points of entanglement, confusion, blindness, torment, and an outward expansion of consciousness to further the phenomenal reality. They have nothing to do with liberation. None of their symbols, myths, and motives have anything to do with liberation. There is only ideas of chaos, terrifying experience, and other kinds of upheavals and confusions. Whether they are conjunct with a certain graha which is feeling strong and doing good, the cognitive capacity is making you feel good, and it's giving you different good things and fulfilling your desires can feel good. But what does that lead to? Maybe it's too early to speak, right? Ultimately, they're always fear inducing and confusion oriented, and that can give us depth. But that function of finding depth from Rahu Ketu's confusion is Jupiter, awareness, sun, clarity of thought through moon, sun, Jupiter. They are different grahas that give us that capacity. Rahu and Ketu's role in and of itself is only distortion. So the sun shines with unchanging self-luminous light. The moon reflects the light representing conditioned existence, our thoughts, emotions, and perception. Rahu and Ketu, the shadows created at their intersection, symbolize the tension and entanglement between the eternal and the transient. Rahu represents the shadow of desire, a longing to expand, grasp, and explore the unknown. Astronomically, it is the ascending node where the moon crosses the sun's path upward, symbolizing growth, ambition, evolution in uncharted realms. It creates wanting to go into domains which one doesn't understand and keep pushing the envelope. It's a lot to do with evolution of consciousness in that sense. This can also simply mean being further deluded and lost in the night of the jungle. The soul is currently going through this in this minuscule section of space time. It can also just mean going into getting lost in the jungle, or moving in a certain direction into the unknown where you actually find the goal. If you're in the right direction of within the unknown space time, you find your actual destination, or you can just be exploring and being curious and being pulled into these different directions and become more entangled and more lost. So both is possible. Ketu represents blindness, completion, and ultimately detachment due to profound disappointments. With Ketu, there's profound expectation, and then there's a profound disappointment, the severing of bonds with what has been experienced. Astronomically, it is the descending node where the moon crosses downward, signifying introspection, apathy towards mundane, and liberation from conditioned identity through the dissatisfied. And this is not moksha. This is not liberation in this sense. This is this disheartened feeling. This feeling of I'm trapped and I had deep expectation and I am disheartened. I am disappointed by this deep expectation. Sun, when it gets liberated, Ketu just gives us a feeling of disappointment, which will then lead to a spiritual process. So ultimately, any graha can cause a spiritual movement in our psyche, a movement of awareness and consciousness. Rahu and Ketu specifically have nothing to do with liberation of that any particular sort. So, sun, Atman, shines with unchanging self luminous light. The moon reflects this light, representing conditioned experience. I'm repeating this because this has to be grounded within us, our thoughts, emotions, and perception. Rahu and Ketu are the shadows created at their intersection, symbolize the tension and entanglement between eternal and the transient. Rahu represents the unconscious, unknown that is yet to happen but will manifest in accordance with the proclivities of the rest of the psychostructure of the birth chart. It is, however, inherently a confusing, darkening, explorative and curious graha. It can easily push the envelope a bit too much and fall into the abyss. It's an important point. And then Ketu represents completion and detachment, the severing of bonds with what has been experienced, discontented, dissatisfied, and disappointed. It is initially fixated in its pursuits. It gets fixated, only gets unhooked and disenchanted from these pursuits through the triple Ds. The discontentment, dissatisfaction, and disappointment causes it to unfixate and finish that sort of thing. So, can we remedy Rahu and Ketu? After all that we've discussed and understood about Rahu and Ketu, what do you think? Can Rahu and Ketu be remedied? What is the problem that they cause that we seek to remedy? So, first and foremost, we understood their birth, their role and function in structuring experience. The problem caused is that of a certain fatedness that arises, a certain trajectory that causes life to move in a certain direction with or without one's knowledge, whether you move in that direction consciously or unconsciously. Then we see the problem. So one is less shocked when one knows how and why these things unfold. It can then feel less chaotic. So one of the core key roles of using the Jyoti of Jyotish, the light of Jyotish, the awareness thing that becoming awareness of our psychostructure, is that especially these dark sort of unconscious points of Rahu and Ketu can give us a lot of understanding about these strange things that happen in life, unexplainable urges, unexplainable desires, shock and awe, movements that change the direction, the trajectory of our lives. So things can feel a little bit less chaotic. We can still find some order within the chaos. Not that the chaos stops. The chaos doesn't actually sort of stop, but the awareness of it sort of slows us down in some deep, profound way within that sort of chaotic movement. And once and sort of we can time these things in a way that the chaotic movement stops at a certain point also. So we can come to terms with sort of become patient with it. So, can these events and things be stopped from happening? I don't know. The honest answer is I don't know. But to remedy a phenomenon, we must remedy the things that cause the phenomenon itself. So, this is my key way that I approach Rahu and Ketu, remedying Rahu and Ketu. It is a process of living and allowing life itself to unfold, living itself, burning off the karma of doing the prarabdh, Purusharth. Purusharth is the four goals, right? Depending on your birth chart, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Depending on your birth chart, is is naturally unfolding. So it is a process of living and allowing life itself to unfold. The whole effort of yoga, its methods, principles, and techniques is essentially designed to remedy the problem of Jyotish. So Jyotish gives us awareness and the awareness of the problem of our being, right? And the ultimate remedy of that problem of being is given in the ashtanga of which is associated with Rishi Patanjali. So in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the niyamas, yamas, pratyahara, the pranayama, dhyana, dharana, samadhi, and all of these sort of eight ashtangas we get, that is a remedy. That is the remedy to the problem of Jyotish. So what we can Buddhism, which is Buddha's yoga, Buddha's teaching, Buddha's understanding and interpretations of yoga, are a remedy to Jyotish. Any profound metaphysically sophisticated system that is that is preparing your body mind to come to a state of no mind, to resolve manas, which and come to an awareness of sun and sort of retract awareness and come to a stable content state, that is the remedy to Rahu and Ketu. So earth, body, deha, taking care of physical body, taking care of your sun, and taking care of your moon, the three things that give rise to the idea of Rahu and Ketu. If we can take care of the earth, which is the earthly experience, the bodily experience, psychosomatic experience we're having in our sort of brain and nervous system, sort of this big brain that our body is. Sun, which is a pure awareness, the Atman, coming to feeding, like stabilizing our attention and sort of developing our focus, and Manas, clarification and stability of the mind, and interpretation, the satellite, the conditioned psyche. These three things, if they're remedied, then Rahu and Ketu, I feel, I believe, can be worked out. So what we can do, however, is that work on the grahas, cultivate them. So when we are in Rahu Ketu experience in life, we have the five elemental capacities to navigate life. And the awareness, confidence, and attunement, stability, which is attention of sun and attunement of moon, of sun and moon respectively, to move through these experiences. So we take care of the five grahas, which is Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, and sun and moon, and take care of our physical body and earthly experience a little bit. The more we do these things, what we can actually work on, and that can take care of the phenomenon of Rahu and Ketu. Because what will you go to if you're trying to go to Rahu? It's a fear, right? It's bhaya orienting, it's confusion. So you cannot get confusion by remedying confusion, but you can resolve confusion by getting clarity with the actual things: speech, mercury, thoughts, articulation, giving order, discipline to life, doing good things towards yourself, and working towards that. As you move towards well-being, Rahu and Ketu find more and more clarity. And yeah, so that's the basic idea. So cultivating sun awareness, stabilize and sensitize moon, learning how to feel properly, how to emote properly. Cultivate the five grahas by working on what they represent and relevant in your particular psychostructure, your birth chart. So when Rahu and Ketu changes arise, when things suddenly take a new direction, we have ourselves and its capacities to move through these tides of change. That's how I believe Rahu and Ketu can be remedied. Understanding of Rahu and Ketu, what they're doing in our birth chart, analyze them properly, and then work on the five grahas and sun and moon. And that is the fundamental remedy. So, thank you so much. I really hope that you enjoyed this lecture. It's a long lecture, I know, but it's quite information packed, I feel. And you can take it slow and go through different bits of the lecture. And please, like, have dialogues, have conversations in the comments section. See what you don't understand, ask what you believe I understood incorrectly, discuss in the comment section. Always be kind and always be respectful. If you're not kind or respectful, either you'd be probably be banned or hidden, or like you will I will not respond to you. The only way I respond to you if you're kind and respectful and genuinely sincerely curious about what we are discussing. So if you're curious, sincere, and you want to have a dialogue about these things in the comments, do that, and I will be more than happy to engage with you. And this was the first lecture of probably a long series of the Rahu Ketu files. So thank you so much. If you stuck around up until now, then you're really absolutely sincere. There's no doubt. And I will hopefully just see you in the next lecture. Thank you so much.